Here I am to tell a story. The story was written by Munshi Premchand. How many of you have read stories written by him? For those who have not enjoyed Premchand as much, maybe because of you never got a chance, he is considered as the best storyteller in Hindi. And his stories primarily owned around just and unjust, haves and have-nots. The story that I picked up today also goes around the injustice that is prevalent in the society, perpetrated by haves onto have-nots, and how nature balances it. The story is titled Vidvansh, or in English, catastrophe. In Banaras district, there is a village called Bira, in which an old, childless widow used to live, named Bhungi. Bhungi didn't own either a scrap of land or a house to live in. Her only source of livelihood was a parching oven. The village folks customarily have one meal a day of parched grains. So, there was always a crowd around Bhungi's oven. Whatever grains she was paid for parching, she would grind or fry and eat it. She slept in a corner of the same little shack that sheltered her oven. As soon as it was light, the day breaks out. She would get up and go out to gather dry leaves. She would bring the dry leaves from all around to make fire. But she would stack the leaves right next to the oven, and after 12, after midday, it was the time for villagers to come to her shelter and have her grains, the grains parched. So after midnight, after noon, she would light the fire and go about parching the grains. But on the days when she had to parch grains for Pandit Uday Khan Pandey, the owner of the village, she would do it hungry. She was obliged to work without pay for Pandit Uday Khan Pandey, the owner of the village. She also had to fetch water for his house, and also for this reason, from time to time, the oven was not lit. She used to go to bed hungry. She lived in the Pandit's village. Therefore, he had full authority to make her do any sort of thing that he wanted to, any kind of odd jobs he wanted her to do. And she was paid not in grains, not in cash, but the permission to stay in the village and to pay to it hungry. In his opinion, if she received food for working from him, how could it be considered as work done without pay? Remember, the food used to come from others, not from Pandit. But since he permitted her to stay there, any food that comes to her, he considered comes from him. And that he thought is doing a favor in just by letting her live in the village at all. bring. How many of you love it? All of us. A day on which fresh grain was fried and eaten and given as gift. No fire was lit in the houses of the village. Bungi's oven was being put to good use today. Everyone came to that oven to have the grain. There was a crowd worthy of a village fair around her. She had scarcely opportunity to draw a breath. Because of the customers' impatience, squabbles kept breaking out. Then, two servants arrived, each carrying a heaped basket of grains from none other than Pandit Udayban Pandit, with the order to parch it right away. When Bungi saw the two baskets, she was alarmed. It was already after 12, and even by sunset, she would not have time to parch so much of grain. Now, she would have to stay at the oven, parching until after dark. For a payment? Nil. No payment at all. She would despair. In despair, she took the two baskets. One of the flunkies said financially, "Don't waste any time or you will be sorry." With his command, the servants went away and Bungi began to parch the grain. It's no laughing matter to parch a whole mound of grain. She had to keep stopping from the parching in order to keep the oven fire going. You had dry leaves which had to be fed into the oven to keep the fire going. She had to stop parching, make sure she give the proper input to keep the fire burning. So, by sundown, not even half the work was done. Not even one basket was parched. She was afraid Panditji's men would be coming. She began to move her hands almost frantically, parching the grains. And then the servants arrived. "Well, is the grain parched?" Feeling bold, Bungi said, "Can't you see? I'm parching it now. The whole day is gone and you haven't finished any more grains than this. Have you been roasting or spoiling it? This is completely uncooked. How is it going to be used for food? It's the ruin of us. You'll see what Pandit does to you for this." The result was that night the oven was broken, dug up, and Bungi was left without a means of livelihood. Bungi now had no means of support. The villagers suffered a good deal because of the destruction of the oven. In many houses, even at noon, cooked cereal was no longer available. People went to Panditji, beseeched him to give the order for the old woman oven to be rebuilt and the fire to be ignited once again. But Pandit was the owner of the village. He had huge ego. He could not back down his words. The oven was not to be rebuilt. So he paid no attention to the villagers. He could not suffer loss of peace. A few people who wished her well urged her to move to another village. Go to some other village. Start over. You have a skill. That's what we see in our TVs. The manager is not giving you the importance that you need, but you have skills. Go to next company. They don't give you importance. Similarly, people here came, told her, go to different places. You have the skill. You will earn. You will eat. You will work. But her heart spent her 50 miserable years, 50 miserable years in this village, and she loved every leaf on every tree around this village. Here, she had known the sorrows and the pleasure of life. She could not give it up, not in the last days of hers to be content. Remember, she was old, content, and you get attachment to the place where you are living, even if those are miserable years that you live there. The very idea of moving distressed her. Sorrow in this place was preferable to happiness in another. A month went by. Very early, one morning, the Pandit Udayhan Pandey, taking his little band of servants with him, went out to collect his rents. Because he was the owner of the place. He had to collect rents. Now, when he looked toward the old woman's oven, he fell into violent rage. It was being made again. He tried to set it up again. He tried to disobey the order of the Pandit. She was energetically rebuilding it with the balls of clay. Most likely, she had spent the night at this work and wanted to finish it before the sun was high. She knew that she was going against the Pandit's wishes, but she hoped that he had forgotten his anger. The time has the ointment, she needed. But alas, the poor creature had grown old without growing wise. Suddenly Panditji shouted, "By whose order?" Bewildered, Bhuki saw he was standing before her. He demanded once again, "By whose order are you building it?" In a flight she said, "Everybody said I should build it, and so I'm doing it. I'll have it smashed again." With this, he kicked the oven. The wet clay collapsed in a heap. He kicked at the top again and again, but she ran in front of it. She took the kick on her side. Rubbing her ribs, she said, "Maharaj," Maharaj is, you call people who give respect Maharaj, people who are owner, you call them Maharaj. "Maharaj, you are not afraid of anybody, but you ought to fear God. What good does it do to you dreaming like this? Do you think gold is going to grow out of this small piece of land? For your own good, I'm telling you, don't torment poor people. Don't be the death to me. You are not going to build this oven and here again." She said politely, "But if I don't, how am I going to get to be able to eat? I'm not responsible for your belly. But if I do nothing except course for you, where will I go for the food? If you are going to stay in this village, you will have to do my course. I'll do them when I have built my oven. I can't do your work just for the sake of staying in the village." "Then don't. Just get out of the village." "How can I? I've grown old in this hut. My in-laws and their grandparents have lived here in the same hut, except for Yama, the king of death. Nobody is going to force me out of it now." "Excellent. Now you are quoting scriptures," Pandit said. "If you would have worked hard, I might have let you stay. But after this, I won't rest until I've had you thrown out." To his attendants he said, Go, get a pile of leaves right away and set fire to the whole thing. We'll show her how to make an oven. In a moment, there was tremendous racket. The flames leapt towards the sky. The blaze spread wildly in all directions till the villagers came rushing. They came clustered around this mountain of fire. Hopelessly, Bungi stood by her oven, watching the conflagration. Suddenly, with a violent dash, she hurled herself into the flames. They came running from everywhere, the villagers. They came running from everywhere, but no one had the courage to go into the mouth of the blaze. In a matter of seconds, her withered body was completely consumed. At that moment, the wind rose with a gust. The liberated flames began to race towards the east. There were some peasants' huts near the oven, which were engulfed by the fierce flames. Fed in this way, the blaze spread even further. Panditji's barn was in its path and it pounded on it. By now, the whole village was in panic. They began to band together to put out the fire, but the sprinkles of water acted like oil in it. The flames kept mounting higher. Pandit's splendid mansion was swallowed up. While he watched, it tossed like a ship amid wild waves and disappeared in the sea of fire. The sound of lamentation broke out. That was amidst the ashes and was even more pitiful than Bungi's previous cries. Over to Prashanth.